believing it would be our first real holiday together in years. Instead, they chose to celebrate somewhere else, without me. So there I was, seated alone at an $800 table in one of the city's finest restaurants, wearing the navy dress my late husband always loved and the pearls he gave me for our 40th anniversary. I tried to convince myself their excuses, last-minute emergencies from each of my 3 children, weren't coordinated. But deep down, I knew. I filled the empty seats with appetizers and Bordeaux, pretending not to notice the families laughing around me. The loneliness hit hard, and the tears came before I could stop them. Then the doors burst open. My 17-year-old grandson Hugo ran in, cheeks flushed from the cold, eyes bright with determination. In his hand was a thick envelope. "I couldn't let them do this to you," he said, breathless. "They're all together, Grandma." Inside that envelope was a key and a DNA test that would change everything. Stay with me until the end of this story, and drop a comment with the city you're watching from, so I know how far this moment reaches. At Romano's, just 3 blocks away. They've been planning this for weeks. My knees nearly gave out as I sank back into the chair. "Planning what?" I managed. Hugo's jaw tightened, a flash of Harold's temper in his young face. "The dinner wasn't the real plan. They needed you out of the way tonight." He lifted the thick envelope. "Because of this." I stared at it as if it might bite. "What is it?" "It's from Grandpa Harold's lawyer. It arrived at Mom's house today." His voice dropped to a whisper. "It's his will, and something else." He slid into the chair beside me, the one his mother should have occupied. "They told me it was a family meeting about your future." But when the lawyer began reading, Hugo's hands trembled as he set the envelope between us. "Everything's yours, Grandma." The house upstate, the investments, all of it. The clatter of the restaurant faded. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. But why would that upset everyone? I am his widow." "Because," Hugo said quietly, "they told everyone, including you, that Grandpa planned to leave most of it to them. Mom already dreamed of renovating the upstate house. Uncle Michael wanted the investments for his business. Uncle David planned to sell property to cover debts." My mouth went dry. "How long have they known?" "Months, maybe longer." He hesitated. "But there's more. Something they don't want you to see." From the envelope, he pulled a set of lab results. "It's a DNA test," he said. "Grandpa ordered it before he passed." My hands shook as I scanned the clinical language, but the meaning was unmistakable. "It compares my DNA to our families," I whispered. Hugo's next words were barely audible. I'm not really your biological grandson. Mom adopted me when I was 2 and never told you. She used me to keep getting support from you and Grandpa." The paper slid from my grasp. A wine glass toppled, red pooling across the white tablecloth like a spreading shadow. Everything I believed about my family, about my life, fractured in an instant. Yet when I looked at Hugo, the boy who had sprinted through the night to tell me the truth, who chose honesty over the lies that raised him, I felt something else begin. Something real. He guided me to the restroom, where I splashed cold water on my face. My reflection looked older than 68, makeup streaked with tears. But my eyes were awake. Back at the table, Hugo finally exhaled and told me the rest. "The lawyer's office had this huge mahogany desk," he said, picking at the breadbasket. "Mom, Uncle Michael, and Uncle David sat there, confident, sure they were about to inherit. Mr. Peterson read the will, small gifts to charities, keepsakes for the kids, and then the big part, the house, the investments, every major asset, all left to you." Mom went white. Uncle Michael argued there had to be a mistake. Uncle David just stared. I pictured it all. My 3 children watching their expectations vanish. "Mr. Peterson stayed calm," Hugo continued. "He explained the will was updated just 6 months before Grandpa passed. Everything goes to you, unless something happens to you first. Then it passes straight to the grandchildren. Grandpa skipped their entire generation. That sounded exactly like Harold, always protective, even beyond the grave. But then," Hugo said, lowering his voice, the lawyer opened another envelope. "Grandpa left instructions to reveal it only if the will was challenged or if family relationships were questioned." My heart pounded. "The DNA test," I murmured. "Right," Hugo said. Grandpa suspected things. He'd overheard conversations about money and wanted the truth. He needed to know who was truly family. I thought back to our last family dinners before Harold passed. He'd grown quieter, his eyes sharper, watching everyone. I'd blamed the cancer for his silence, never imagining he might have seen truths I'd missed. "So the lawyer opened the envelope right there?" I asked. Hugo nodded. "The DNA results show I'm not biologically related to anyone in that room. Not Mom, not the uncles, not you." My breath caught. "And there was a letter from a private investigator Grandpa hired," Hugo continued. "A private investigator?" "Yeah. Mom's story about me being the child of a distant cousin who died in an accident, all of it was fabricated. She arranged an informal adoption from a teenage mother and never told anyone. No blood ties to your family at all." I sat back as if struck. "But why would she lie like that?" Hugo gave a bitter laugh, far too old for 17. "Money, Grandma. It's always been about money. She knew you and Grandpa had generous hearts, so she built the perfect tale. The orphaned relative who needed a loving home. Memories crashed into place. Every phone call asking for help with school clothes, sports gear, tutoring. I'd written check after check, happy to give my grandson every chance. How much do you think they got from us over the years?" I whispered. The investigator listed it. "Just your direct help, school, activities, medical bills, close to $200,000. And that's not counting everything else." "What else?" Hugo hesitated. "The times Mom claimed you were having memory problems so she could help manage your finances. The loans Uncle Michael wanted for his business. Uncle David's gambling debts dressed up as family emergencies." Each revelation pressed heavier on my chest. "They planned this for years," Hugo said quietly. "Mom even coached me on what to say when we visited, how to sound grateful, how to mention things I needed, how to make you feel important. I thought it was normal family stuff. Until tonight. I studied this boy, this young man, who wasn't my grandson by blood, but who had risked everything to tell me the truth." "What happened after the lawyer finished reading?" "They erupted." Mom screamed that Grandpa must have been confused when he wrote the will. Uncle Michael called his attorney on the spot. Uncle David just kept repeating, "This isn't fair." And me? I sat there remembering every hug you gave me, every birthday card, every time you asked about my friends like you truly cared. And I realized something. Even without blood ties, you've been more of a real grandmother than anyone else has been real family. My throat tightened. "They didn't even notice when I left," Hugo said. "They were too busy plotting how to contest the will, how to prove Grandpa incompetent, how to get what they think they deserve. Mom was already talking about hiring her own lawyer, so I came here. I ran the last 8 blocks. I couldn't let them do this to you anymore. You've been alone long enough." Looking at his earnest face, cheeks still flushed from the cold, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not just love, but hope. Maybe family wasn't about shared DNA. Maybe it was about who shows up when it matters. Yet a chill lingered. If my children had hidden Hugo's adoption for 15 years, what else had they concealed? And how far would they go to get Harold's estate? The cab ride to my apartment was silent. Hugo clutched the manila envelope as if it contained dynamite. Every few blocks he glanced at me, worried I might suddenly see him as the enemy. "You can stay the night," I said as we pulled up. "We'll figure everything out tomorrow." He nodded. "Mom's probably wondering where I am by now." "Let her wonder." Inside my small apartment, I made tea while Hugo sat at the kitchen table, finally allowing his shoulders to drop. In the soft light, he looked impossibly young to carry such heavy secrets. "How long have you known?" I asked, setting a mug in front of him. "About not being related?" "I've suspected for years," he said, staring into the steam. "But I only found out for sure tonight. There were always little things that didn't add up." "Like what?" "Medical stuff, mostly." "When I was 12, Hugo began, I needed surgery for my appendix. The doctors kept asking about family medical history, and every time Mom would panic. One visit, she claimed her parents died too young to know their medical backgrounds. Another time, she insisted certain traits came from your side of the family. The stories never matched. I thought of all the moments I'd marveled at how different Hugo was from the rest of us. his dark hair among our fair heads, his unusual height, his talent for art when none of us could draw a straight line. And when she talked about my adoption, Hugo continued, I'd hear pieces of conversations when she thought I wasn't listening. Things like, as long as he doesn't find out, or, it's working better than we planned. That must have been terrifying for a child. It was more confusing than scary, he said. I didn't understand what they were planning or why it mattered if I learned the truth. Lots of kids are adopted, right? But as I got older, I started seeing the pattern. What pattern? He took a slow sip of tea. Every time you and Grandpa were generous, birthday checks, Christmas gifts, help with school expenses, Mom would get this satisfied look. And she always made sure I called to thank you, coaching me on the exact words to make you feel good about helping. My chest tightened. Did you realize what she was doing? Not at first. When I was little, I thought that's how families worked. But around 13 or 14, I noticed how she timed her requests for money. She'd bring me along whenever she wanted to ask for something, using me as leverage. She used you to pull at our hearts. Exactly. If it was about tuition, she'd have me wear my school uniform. If she wanted money for sports, she'd tell me to look sad. She'd even remind me to mention things I needed. I set my teacup down harder than I meant to. It's awful. The hardest part, Hugo said quietly, is that I genuinely loved spending time with you and Grandpa. Those feelings were real, even if Mom orchestrated the circumstances. You two were the only adults who cared about what I thought, not just what I could do for you. Hugo, our love for you was never about blood, I said, my voice breaking. He blinked back tears. I hoped that was true. I've spent years wondering if you'd still care once you knew. Silence settled between us, heavy but strangely comforting. Then Hugo spoke again, softer. There's something else about tonight. After I left the lawyer's office, I didn't come straight here. I stopped at Mom's house to grab some things. I thought maybe I could avoid a fight, just disappear until it calmed down. But they were already there, and they were planning. My stomach tightened. Planning what? They were on a conference call with a lawyer Uncle Michael knows. They're not just challenging the will over Grandpa's mental capacity. They want to challenge my right to any inheritance as a so-called fraudulent heir. What does that mean? It means they're going to claim that because I'm not biologically related, any gifts or money you and Grandpa ever gave me were obtained under false pretenses. If they can convince a court of that, they think they can void parts of the will. The cruelty of it stole my breath. They'd sacrifice a 17-year-old to get the money? Gets worse, Hugo said, his hands trembling around the teacup. They were also talking about having you declared incompetent. What? Uncle Michael said your decision to keep supporting me after learning the truth could be used as evidence of diminished capacity. They think if they can prove you're not fit to handle the inheritance, they can get appointed as your guardians and control everything. The walls seemed to close in. My own children were willing to destroy my autonomy, my dignity, just to seize Harold's estate. Did they know you were listening? No. I was in my room with the door cracked, but I heard enough. They're meeting that lawyer tomorrow morning. Mom's looking for doctors who will testify about your mental state. Uncle David is researching guardianship laws, and Uncle Michael is already dividing the inheritance on paper. My voice barely rose above a whisper. And what about you? What happens to you in their plan? Hugo's smile turned sharp, far too old for 17. I become the villain, he said quietly. The con artist who fooled a poor old woman out of her money. They'll play the part of devoted children who uncovered a fraud and rushed in to save their mother. A strange calm settled over me. The beautiful thing about hitting rock bottom is that you stop fearing the fall. My children had shown me exactly who they were, capable of any betrayal in service of greed. There was nothing left for them to take except my dignity, and I refused to hand that over. Hugo, I said, my voice steadier than it had been all night. How would you feel about helping me beat them at their own game? For the first time since he burst into the restaurant, he gave a real smile, hopeful, determined. I'd feel like someone in this family is finally fighting back. Good, I replied, reaching for Harold's old address book. Tomorrow we visit Mr. Peterson. Then we'll drive to the house upstate to see what other surprises your grandfather left behind. I didn't tell Hugo the rest. I already had a plan forming, one that would give my children exactly what they deserved without me sinking to their level. Harold had always been 3 steps ahead. If I knew my husband, this inheritance was only the beginning of his protection. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. Hugo was still asleep on my couch, curled beneath Harold's old Afghan, looking peaceful for the first time since I'd known him. I brewed coffee and called Mr. Peterson's office as soon as it opened. "Mrs. Holloway," the secretary said warmly. "Mr. Peterson was hoping to hear from you. Can you come in this morning? He has additional documents your husband left with specific instructions." More documents. Of course Harold had planned for everything. Hugo stirred as I dressed. For a moment I saw the small boy Sarah first brought to my door. Sweet, uncertain, desperate to please. "How are you feeling?" I asked. "Like I slept for the first time in years," he said. I knew exactly what he meant. We took a cab downtown to the modest office Harold had trusted for over 30 years. Mr. Peterson, a kind-eyed man behind wire-rimmed glasses, greeted us. "Mrs. Holloway," he said, standing, "and you must be Hugo. Your grandfather spoke of you often." Hugo blinked, surprised. "He did?" "Oh, yes. He cared deeply about your well-being. In fact, that's part of why we're here." He invited us to sit and slid a thick manila envelope across the desk. "Your husband left instructions to share these materials only if the will was challenged or if anyone questioned family ties. After what happened yesterday, I believe it's time." My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were photographs, bank statements, phone records, even transcripts. 18 months ago, Mr. Peterson explained, your husband hired a private investigator. He'd grown suspicious of certain financial requests from your children. The first photo showed Sarah leaving an ultra-luxury spa, 3 days after calling me in tears about being unable to buy Hugo's school supplies. She told me she was working extra shifts as a nurse to make ends meet, I whispered. The next photo. Michael dining at a high-end restaurant, champagne on the table. Stapled to the back was an $800 receipt, dated the same day he borrowed $3,000 from me for a supposed medical emergency. But the bank statements revealed even more. Page after page showed deposits from Harold and me, followed immediately by transfers to designer stores, vacation resorts, and luxury purchases. None of the money had gone to real emergencies. "There's more," Mr. Peterson said gently. "Audio recordings." Harold began recording family meetings, always with everyone's knowledge. He claimed his hearing was failing and he needed the volume, but it was really to document the conversations. Mr. Peterson set a small digital recorder on the desk and handed me a pair of earphones. "This was recorded 6 weeks before Harold passed," he said. "Your children requested a family meeting to discuss your future care." My hands shook as I pressed play. "Mom's getting more forgetful, Dad," Sarah's voice began. "We're worried about her living alone." "She seems fine to me," Harold replied, calm but tired. "She wouldn't seem confused to you because you're with her all the time," Michael added smoothly. I frowned. I don't repeat myself. My memory is sharp. "Keep listening," Peterson urged. David's voice came next. "If something happens to you, Dad, we need to make sure Mom is protected. Maybe we should start handling her finances now, while you can help with the transition." "What kind of involvement?" Harold asked. "Just basics," Sarah said. "Maybe add one of us to her accounts. Power of attorney for emergencies. You know how overwhelming finances can be for women her age." Women her age. I was 67, not 90. "She's perfectly capable of managing her own affairs," Harold said firmly. "Of course, right now," Michael replied, "but we should plan ahead. And honestly, Dad, some of the money you two are spending seems unnecessary. Like all the money on Hugo." My blood ran cold. Beside me, Hugo sat perfectly still. Harold's voice sharpened. "Hugo is absolutely family, and what we choose to spend on him is none of your concern." "Be realistic," Sarah pressed. "He's adopted, and he'll be 18 soon. The college fund you've set aside for him could pay for a nice assisted living facility for Mom." "Your mother doesn't need assisted living," Harold snapped. "Not yet." The conversation went on for 20 more minutes. My children, one after another, calmly laying out a plan to strip away my independence while pretending it was for my own good. They spoke of love and protection, but every word dripped with calculation. When the recording ended, silence filled the room. Peterson handed me a tissue. "There are 12 more recordings like this," he said gently. "Each one shows your children trying to gain control of your finances while casting doubt on your competence." Harold saw through it all. He was furious. That's when he hired the investigator and began safeguarding your future. He slid another folder across the desk. This is a comprehensive analysis of every dollar you and Harold gave your children over the past 15 years. The total at the bottom made me dizzy. $847,000. Money meant for emergencies, medical bills, education, Peterson explained. The investigator tracked where it really went. Luxury vacations, designer clothes, expensive cars, home renovations, high-end electronics. They were never struggling, not even close. Hugo's voice was tight. They pretended the whole time. Peterson nodded. The investigator also uncovered email chains dating back 5 years where your children discussed how to manage their parents' money and divide assets. Finally, he handed me a final document. This, he said, is the most important one. Harold called it Protection Protocol for Della Holloway. 15 pages of meticulous legal planning. He anticipated every move they might make. I scanned the pages, countermeasures for every possible tactic, legal steps, financial safeguards, even personal safety instructions. And here, Peterson said, tapping a clause near the end, is the key. Any heir who challenges the will or attempts to have you declared incompetent forfeits their claim entirely. Their share passes directly to you. Harold made sure of it. I exhaled slowly, a strange mix of heartbreak and awe. Harold had seen everything coming, and even in death, he was still protecting me. Mr. Peterson set a final document on the desk. Your husband also established a trust that activates if anyone questions your mental competency, he explained. The moment a challenge is filed, every asset transfers to an independent trustee until the matter is resolved. I glanced at Hugo, who was reading over my shoulder, eyes wide with amazement. Your grandfather truly thought of everything, Mollis, Peterson added. There's one last piece. He left you a letter to be opened only after you'd seen all this evidence. He handed me an envelope with Harold's familiar handwriting. For my beloved Della, when you're ready to fight back. As I tore it open, I realized Harold hadn't just left me an inheritance. He'd left me the tools to reclaim my life and to protect the person who had risked everything to tell me the truth. My children thought they were 3 steps ahead. But Harold had been playing a completely different game. Now it was my turn. The drive to our upstate house took 2 quiet hours. Hugo and I watched the familiar countryside roll by, each of us lost in thought. Every curve of the road carried memories. Our first visit to the property, long summers spent restoring it, evenings on the porch watching the lake catch the last light of day. I'd read Harold's letter twice before we left Mr. Peterson's office, and I was still absorbing his words. The man I'd loved for 45 years had understood our children better than I ever had. And more than that, he had loved me enough to spend his final months building a fortress around me. Are you nervous? Hugo asked as we turned down the gravel drive. I don't think nervous is the right word, I said, eyes fixed on the house rising ahead. I think I'm ready. The place looked exactly as it had before Harold's diagnosis, blue shutters, wraparound porch, the same flower boxes waiting for spring. But knowing it was truly mine now, secured by Harold's foresight, made it feel different, stronger, safe. Hugo helped with the new key Mr. Peterson had given us. Harold had arranged it himself. Inside, the scent of lavender sachets mixed with the faint polish Harold always insisted on using. It's beautiful, Grandma, Hugo said, gazing at the stone fireplace and shelves of books. Your mother wanted to gut it, I replied. She always called it too old-fashioned, too small, too quiet. She wanted a showplace. But Harold and I built this life. This house is ours. I moved from room to room, the kitchen where we cooked side by side, the reading nook where we'd spent rainy afternoons, the bedroom where we planned our retirement dreams. But it was in Harold's study that I found the final treasure. The desk looked untouched, crossword puzzles half finished, his reading glasses folded on a biography. But a single envelope lay at the center, my name written in his careful script. This is it, I whispered, my hands trembling. Hugo waited silently as I sat in Harold's chair and opened the envelope. 3 pages of cream-colored stationery lay inside, covered with the handwriting I knew as well as my own. My dearest Della, it began. If you're reading this, our children have already shown you who they truly are. I'm sorry, my love. Sorry you had to see their nature in this way. And sorry I couldn't shield you from the pain while I was still here. But know this: every choice I made, every legal step, every document was born of love for you. Not anger at them, though I felt plenty of that. Love for you and determination that you would never be at their mercy. You've told me many times that you think you failed as a mother. You haven't. You gave them everything: love, guidance, opportunity. You sacrificed your own dreams so they could chase theirs, worked extra shifts to pay for their education, went without so they would never feel lack. The problem was never your love. The problem was that they mistook that love for weakness. They saw your generosity as something they were owed. They took your forgiveness as permission to hurt you again. And each time you forgave, they pushed further. I watched it happen little by little. Each bailout when they created their own financial mess. Each holiday they missed without consequence. Each excuse you made for their behavior. And I should have stepped in sooner. I lowered the pages for a moment, my eyes stinging. Harold's voice, steady, protective, unwavering, seemed to fill the quiet room. He had known. He had seen everything I'd tried to explain away. And even after death, he was still standing between me and the storm. For the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid. I felt ready. I should have insisted we stop enabling them years ago, Harold's letter continued. But I knew how deeply you loved them, and I couldn't bear to make you choose between your husband and your children. So I stayed quiet and watched them break your heart again and again. When they began talking about managing your finances and questioning your competency, I couldn't stay silent any longer. The things they said when they thought I wasn't listening, the way they spoke of you as if you were already gone, an obstacle to their inheritance, instead of their mother, showed me they were capable of anything. So I made my plans, not to punish them, though they deserve consequences, but to protect you. Every dollar I left you is yours to use as you see fit. Every safeguard I set in motion is designed to preserve your independence. Every document and piece of evidence exists to defend you if they ever try to paint you as incapable. But more than that, Della, I needed you to understand this. You are not responsible for their choices. You are not required to sacrifice your peace for their greed. You are not obliged to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. The woman I married 45 years ago was strong, independent, and capable of anything she set her mind to. The only thing that changed was that you allowed others to convince you otherwise. That woman is still there, my love. Consider this letter your permission to stand up for yourself. Hugo is a good boy, Della. I know he is not our biological grandson, but he has shown more loyalty and love than our own children ever have. If you choose to keep him in your life, you have my full blessing. If he chooses to stay with you instead of them, you will both be better for it. I have placed additional funds in a separate account for his education, not because of bloodlines, but because he has earned it by being the kind of person our actual grandchildren never learned to be. The account details are in the safe behind my diploma. The combination is your birthday. There's something else in the safe as well. The deed to the lot next to this house. I bought it 5 years ago, hoping we might build a guest cottage for our 50th anniversary. We won't see that day together, but I want you to have it anyway. Build something beautiful there, Della. Something entirely your own. The children will return once they realize they cannot break the will. They will apologize, promise they've changed, swear their motives were pure. Don't believe them. People capable of such manipulation do not change because their plans fail. They will come back for one reason. They want something, but you owe them nothing. You have already given more than any parent should ever have to give. The rest of your life belongs to you. Choose happiness. Travel to the places we dreamed of visiting. Spoil yourself the way you've spent a lifetime spoiling everyone else. Surround yourself only with people who love you for who you are, not for what you can give them. And always remember how loved you are, not just by me, though my love for you is beyond words, but by everyone whose life you've touched with your kindness and generosity. You are enough, Della. You have always been enough. You deserve every good thing life can offer. All my love, always and forever, Harold. P.S. The wine cellar is stocked with the Bordeaux you adore. I may be gone, but I'm still taking care of you. By the time I lowered the pages, tears streamed down my face. Tears of recognition and release, not sorrow. For the first time in years, I felt fully seen, truly protected. Hugo had slipped into the room and now sat across from me, his own eyes shining. He really loved you, he said softly. He really did, I whispered. I folded the letter and held it to my chest. Around us, Harold's study felt alive. The safe behind his diploma, the wide windows framing the land he had secured for me, every corner echoing with his presence. For the first time since his death, I didn't feel loss. I felt a gift. I stood, energy surging through me. Come on, I said to Hugo, voice steady and strong. Let's see what else your grandfather left us. But first, there were phone calls to make. Harold had given me every tool to protect myself, and now it was my turn to use them. 3 phone calls. That was all it took to end 40 years of being taken for granted. That afternoon in Harold's study, I called each of my children. My voice was steady, the words precise. Sarah cried first, of course. Tears had always been her favorite weapon. Mom, you can't be serious. We're family. Families forgive? You're right, I told her. Families forgive. They also respect each other. And you stopped doing that years ago. But what about Hugo? You can't just steal my son. I'm not stealing anyone. He's 17, old enough to choose where he lives. And he's chosen to stay with the person who actually loves him. Michael tried anger instead of tears. This is ridiculous. That kid is poisoning you against your own children. What I see, I replied, is a young man who showed me more honesty and loyalty in one day than you've shown in years. He came to find me when I was alone, instead of plotting with lawyers to take what isn't yours. We were trying to protect you, he protested. From what? From my own happiness? From spending my own money? No, Michael. You were protecting yourselves. David, the least skilled liar, went with a quiet plea. Maybe we handled things wrong, but we're still your kids. You can't just cut us off. I can, I said, and I am. You made your choice when you lied, stole, and planned to have me declared incompetent. Now you live with the consequences. 6 months later, I stood on the porch of the lake house watching Hugo graduate from the local high school. He'd transferred for his senior year, saying he wanted a fresh start, but I knew the truth. He wanted to stay with me, and I wanted him here too. Beside the main house, the guest cottage Harold once imagined was nearly finished, a fairy tale structure Hugo had designed himself. It would be his when he left for college, a home base he could return to whenever he wished. Because this was home now for both of us. My children tried everything after those calls. Flowers, letters, unannounced visits. Sarah even brought Emma once, hoping a glimpse of my granddaughter would weaken my resolve. But Harold's letter had taught me something I would never forget. I am not responsible for fixing relationships other people have broken. Hugo blossomed. Without the weight of being a pawn, he became the young man he was meant to be. Funny, thoughtful, creative, wise beyond his years. He earned a spot at a top art school with a partial scholarship. Harold's education fund would cover the rest. More importantly, he became the family I'd always wanted. Someone who asked about my day because he cared, who remembered what mattered to me, who hugged me simply because. The cottage was his graduation gift and my gift to myself. For the first time in my life, I had built something from the ground up that was completely mine. Grandma Della, Hugo called from the yard, adjusting the porch furniture we'd chosen together. Mrs. Henderson is here. Margaret Henderson, our closest neighbor, and now a dear friend, stepped onto the porch carrying a wrapped package. I brought Hugo a graduation present, she said. You didn't have to do that, I smiled. Of course I did. His family. The word meant something different now. It wasn't about blood. It was about who shows up, who chooses love, who offers respect. Hugo unwrapped a set of professional art supplies, tools he'd admired in town but never asked for. His face lit up, and I felt my heart swell. This is too much, he murmured. Nonsense, Margaret said. You're going to be a famous artist someday. I want to say I knew you when... As the sun dipped behind the trees, painting the lake in golden rose, We sat together, Hugo sketching, Margaret and I talking about gardens and books, the quiet life we'd created. Then headlights swept across the yard. A car turned into the driveway. My stomach tightened. 6 months of peace had taught me to be wary of unexpected visitors. Whatever waited at the end of that gravel path, I was ready. For the first time in decades, I was no one's victim. I was Della Holloway, loved, protected, and finally free to decide who belonged in my family. It turned out the late-night visitor wasn't a confrontation at all. It was just Dr. Morrison, making his weekly stop to check on Margaret's blood pressure medication. He'd become an unexpected part of our little chosen family, often staying for dinner and bringing stories from his practice, his dry humor reminding me so much of Harold. "How's our graduate?" he asked Hugo as he settled into the extra porch chair we'd added just for him. "Officially done with high school as of this morning," Hugo grinned, "and officially terrified about college." "Good," Dr. Morrison said. "A little fear means you're paying attention." As the evening unfolded, more friends wandered in. Tom from the hardware store dropped off the custom mailbox Hugo had ordered for the cottage, his initials painted in a bright design. Jenny from the bookstore arrived with a bottle of wine to toast Hugo's graduation and ended up staying for dinner. This was my life now, not the grand social circle my children once insisted I should want, but something far better. A community of people who showed up because they cared, not because they had to. Around 10 o'clock, my phone rang. I nearly ignored it. Months of letting my children's calls go unanswered had become habit, but the number was unfamiliar. "Mrs. Holloway," a gentle voice said. "This is Amanda Peterson, James Peterson's daughter. I'm sorry to call so late, but I wanted to let you know we've completed the final part of your husband's instructions. The charitable donations," my breath caught. "How much?" $200,000, she said. "Split between the children's hospital, the women's shelter, and the library's literacy program. All in your name, just as your husband requested. Even in death, Harold was making sure the world saw me as he always had. A woman of substance, of generosity, of worth." When I hung up, I looked around the porch. Hugo was helping Margaret down the steps to Dr. Morrison's car. Jenny packed leftover cake for her daughter. Tom told a story that had everyone laughing. This laughter, this quiet care, was Harold's final gift. Not just the house or the trust or the carefully written safeguards, but permission. Permission to stop earning love from those who only took, and to welcome love from those who gave it freely. Hugo came back up the steps and settled beside me. "Good day?" he asked. "The best," I said, and meant it. "Grandma Della," he said softly. "I know I'm not really your grandson. The DNA test proved that. But you're the realest family I've ever had." I reached for his hand. "Blood doesn't make family," I told him. "Love makes family. Choice makes family. Showing up makes family. And you, Hugo, have been more family to me than anyone else in my life." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars shimmer across the still lake. Tomorrow we'd start packing for college. In the fall, I'd drive him to his dorm like any proud grandmother would. And when he came home for holidays, it would be to this house, to this life we'd built, to the family we had chosen. My children would probably keep trying to return, arriving at holidays with promises and apologies, hoping to tug at old guilt. But Harold's letter rested in my dresser drawer, ready to remind me who I was and what I deserved. I deserved peace. I deserved respect. I deserved to be loved for who I am, not for what I could give. And sitting on that porch, surrounded by people who saw me clearly and loved me anyway, I finally had all three. The lake lay perfectly still, reflecting the stars like a mirror. Everything was exactly as Harold had planned, and for the first time in years, I was exactly who I was meant to be. Now I'd love to hear from you. What would you have done in my place? Have you faced a moment where you had to choose real family over blood ties? Share your thoughts in the comments, and stay to the end screen for 2 more stories from this channel that will surprise you. Thank you for watching and for spending this time with me.